The air in the grand hall of Station Celestia was a living thing. It didn't just have a scent. It had a personality, a history, a soul. It was the ghost of 1,000 worlds, a tapestry woven from the exhalations of 47 different species. The crisp, ozone and metal tang of the station's life support formed the baseline, but layered over it was a symphony of alien aromas. There was the heady, fungal richness of the mycelian delegates, like a damp forest after a rain, the sharp, electric citrus scent of the vaccines that prickled in the nose, the delicate, jasmine and honey fragrance that seemed to emanate from the willowy delegates of Lyra, and beneath it all, the faint, comforting smell of old books and dust that was uniquely, nostalgically human. To Ryan Mitchell, standing frozen by a marble column that was allegedly a priceless relic from old Earth, though he privately suspected it was a very good synthetic, it was the smell of pure, undiluted anxiety. It was the scent of a botanical garden that had collided with a perfume factory at terminal velocity, and he was a simple weed caught in the wreckage. The data pad in his hand felt less like a piece of technology and more like a leaden brick, its weight an anchor tethering him to his own insignificance. Its contents were mundane. Confirmation codes for grain shipments, the bureaucratic lifeblood that kept colonies fed and alliances stable. A simple, straightforward task. Walk across the hall. Hand the pad to Ambassador Chen before the Andromedian delegation departed, and return to the comforting obscurity of his station behind the scenes. That was where junior attachés belonged. They were the stagehands, not the players. But the crowd, a swirling, churning mosaic of interstellar life, had other ideas. A Krellian diplomat, a magnificent giant standing 7 feet tall with skin that shimmered like a puddle of spilled oil under a rainbow, was holding court directly in his path. The Krellian's voice was a booming, multi-tonal instrument, and his limbs swept through the air in grand, expressive arcs, telling what sounded like either a profound epic of state or an incredibly long-winded joke. Ryan's translator implant, a sleek piece of tech nestled behind his ear, sputtered and choked on the Krellian's enthusiasm, reducing the speech to garbled static, punctuated by random, disconnected words. Fiscal policy, nebular harvest, noodles. Noodles. Ryan almost smiled. The universe was a strange and wonderful place. He took a deep, steadying breath, the perfumed air doing little to calm his nerves. Commit, he told himself. Just move. He turned sideways, pressing the data pad to his chest like a shield, and began to squeeze through the narrow gap between two conversing groups. The fabric of his standard-issue diplomatic suit brushed against the iridescent, chitinous armor of a Tholian, and someone's elaborate, feathered headpiece, a piece that probably cost more than his yearly salary, grazed his shoulder. He murmured an apology that was lost in the ambient roar of 1,000 whispered deals and carefully parsed pleasantries. The Krellian's arms swept out in another grand gesture. Ryan ducked, a flush of pride warming his chest. 3 months of navigating these receptions had taught him something. He was learning the dance. He was getting good at this. And then he saw his destination. Ambassador Chen was across the hall, a calm, composed island in the chaotic sea, speaking with a cluster of officials near the massive viewing ports. Beyond the reinforced transparent steel, the stars weren't the steady, patient pinpricks of normal space. Here, in the slipstream of the station's FTL orbit, they streaked past in beautiful, impossible ribbons of light. The universe itself turned into a painter's canvas of distorted luminescence. Hope surged in Ryan's chest. He stepped forward, confidence buoying him. He could do this. He was almost there. He was already composing the mental report in his head. Mission accomplished. Data pad delivered. No diplomatic incidents caused. It was at that precise moment, flush with premature success, that the universe decided to administer a swift, brutal, and deeply humbling lesson in humility. He didn't see her. He couldn't have seen her. The Krellian's bulk still blocked his sight line, and his focus was locked on the promised land of that clear-looking path. He turned directly into the gap, putting his full, albeit meager, weight into the step. And collided with something solid. There was a startled gasp. Soft, feminine, and decidedly not his own. The impact was jarring, a solid thud that resonated through his shoulder and ribs. He stumbled backward, his feet performing a clumsy, desperate dance to maintain purchase on the polished marble floor. The data pad, his precious, mundane cargo, slipped from his grasp and skittered across the floor, its screen blinking a cheerful, oblivious blue. His brain, a finely tuned instrument of diplomatic panic, was already launching into damage control protocols before his eyes even managed to focus on who, or what, he'd hit. Then his world narrowed, and his stomach performed a nosedive straight through the floor plates of Station Celestia. She was tall, nearly eye level with him, even in flat, silvery shoes that looked deceptively simple but undoubtedly cost more than his entire apartment block back on Kepler 186f. Her skin was a pale, ethereal blue, like the heart of a glacier, and it seemed to glow with a soft, internal luminescence. Bioengineered bioluminescence, his diplomatic training supplied, unhelpfully. Her hair was a cascade of pure, snow-white silk, intricately braided and coiled, falling over her shoulders like a frozen waterfall. Each braid was adorned with tiny, flawless crystals that caught the hull's light and fractured it into 1,000 miniature rainbows. The gown she wore was a living masterpiece, its fabric shifting through colors like a waking dream, deep purples bleeding into radiant golds, which then melted into shimmering, liquid silver. And her ears, long, elegant, sweeping back from her skull in graceful, delicate points. Celestine nobility. His gaze, traitorous and slow, traveled upward, past the elegant line of her neck, to the delicate circlet of woven silver and star-kissed crystal resting on her brow as if it had been born there, a natural extension of her being. Princess. The air around them died. The constant, low roar of the reception vanished, sucked into a vacuum of pure, stunned silence. In a hall filled with hundreds of beings, the only sound Ryan could hear was the frantic, hammering rhythm of his own heart, a wild drumbeat of terror against his ribs. He could also hear, with terrifying clarity, the distinctive, synchronized thud of heavy boots on marble. Guards, moving fast. His mouth was dry as dust. "I'm so sorry," he heard himself say, his voice a thin, reedy thing that seemed to come from very far away. "I didn't see you. I was trying to. I wasn't watching." The woman's eyes that couldn't decide if they wanted to be shimmering silver or pale, amethyst violet, were studying him with an unnerving intensity. Her long, elegant ears twitched slightly, and he remembered with a fresh wave of dread that they weren't just decorative. Celestine nobility could detect electromagnetic fields, sense the tension in a room, the spike of adrenaline in a bloodstream. She could probably taste his absolute, soul-crushing terror. "Peace," she said. Her voice was like crystal bells in cool water, cultured, composed, and utterly calm. She raised a single, slender hand, a gesture so casual it might have been to brush a stray lock of hair from her face. But the effect was instantaneous. 4 very large, very armored Celestine guards, who had been closing in with lethal purpose, froze mid-stride, their hands hovering near the weapons at their hips. "It was crowded," she continued, her tone mild. "These things happen." Ryan's brain was a broken record, stuck on a groove of self-immolation. "I know, but I literally I ran into you. I hit." He stopped himself, his face flushing hot, before he could specify exactly where he'd hit her. His night was catastrophic enough without verbally underscoring the location of his transgression. "Your navigation skills could use refinement," she observed, and there was something new in her tone now, a flicker of something that might have been amusement. "You struck me with considerable force. I'm impressed you stayed on your feet." "I'm so sorry." Ryan tried again, because apparently his vocabulary had been reduced to those 3 words, playing on a desperate, hopeless loop. "Ryan." The voice came from behind him, tight, strained, and vibrating with barely controlled panic. Ryan turned to find Ambassador Chen standing there, his face a palette of shifting colors that had finally settled on a pale, sickly gray that did not look healthy for a human being. Chen's face had gone through several colors and settled on a pale gray that didn't look healthy. "This line is kept as it perfectly captures the moment." "Your Highness," Chen said, and he executed a bow so deep and formal that Ryan felt a sympathetic twinge in his own spine. "Please accept our most profound and humble apologies. This is Ryan Mitchell, one of our junior attachés. He is new to these functions and clearly did not recognize Your Highness." The final pieces of the puzzle, heavy and leaden, clicked into place in Ryan's mind. Not just nobility, royalty. He hadn't just bumped into a dignitary, he had body-checked the crown heir of the most powerful empire in this sector of the galaxy. Princess Lyanna of House Celestine, the woman said, and now, undeniably, the ghost of a smile was playing on her lips. Crown heir to the Celestine Dominion, and apparently, a significant navigational hazard. Her violet-silver eyes fixed on Ryan, and he felt pinned, like a specimen under a microscope. "Breathe, young attaché. You appear to be considering unconsciousness as an escape route." The honesty, born of sheer terror, spilled out before he could stop it. "It's crossed my mind, Your Highness," he admitted, and then immediately wanted to swallow his own tongue. Princess Lyanna laughed. It wasn't the polite, tinkling laugh of courtly decorum. It was an actual, genuine laugh, rich and warm and surprisingly deep. The sound was so unexpected, so human, that several nearby delegates visibly relaxed, their own postures softening. Ryan noticed her guards did the same, their hands moving away from their weapons, weapons he really wished he hadn't noticed they were carrying. Honesty, Lyanna said, as if she had just discovered a rare and precious gem. How refreshing. Ambassador Chen looked like a man attempting to achieve quantum superposition, existing in multiple states of panic simultaneously. A tiny, frantic twitch had developed under his left eye, a tell Ryan had never seen before, and they had survived 3 separate diplomatic incidents just last month alone. "Your Highness is most gracious," Chen managed, his voice strained thin. "Ryan has apologized, and now we will be leaving immediately. Possibly forever." Ryan was fairly certain Chen had added that last part under his breath, but the way Princess Lyanna's long ears shifted, a fraction of a degree, suggested she'd heard it anyway. Those ears weren't just for show. They could pick up the panicked electromagnetic flutter of Chen's neural implants as he mentally composed his resignation letter. "I am deeply sorry, Your Highness," Ryan said, attempting a bow of his own. It felt clumsy and awkward, a poor imitation of Chen's practiced grace. His diplomatic training was screaming protocols at him, but most of them involved not physically assaulting royalty, which wasn't helpful now. It was completely unintentional. "I hope I didn't hurt you, or cause offense, or create an interstellar incident." "You are still talking," Lyanna interrupted, her tone gentle but firm. "The apology is accepted. You may relax." Ryan tried to will his shoulders to drop from their defensive position somewhere near his ears. They refused. Relaxation was a concept, a memory from a simpler time. Lyanna tilted her head, a bird-like gesture of curiosity. Her long, elegant ears angled forward slightly, focusing on him in a way that made Ryan wonder exactly what she was sensing. Could she hear the frantic, rabbit-like pace of his heart? Detect the cortisol and adrenaline flooding his system like a toxic river? Read the desperate, silent prayer he was sending to any deity who might be listening, anyone who protected clumsy junior attaches from life-altering mistakes. "You immediately took responsibility," she said, almost to herself. "No excuses about the crowd, no attempt to minimize what happened. You simply apologized." She turned her gaze to Chen. "You are training him well, Ambassador." Chen made a sound that was somewhere between a strangled acknowledgement and the whimper of a small, dying animal. Ryan couldn't tell which. "What is your role here, Junior Attaché Mitchell?" Lyanna asked, and Ryan felt a fresh, creeping horror as he realized she was genuinely interested in his answer. I assist with documentation and logistics, Your Highness," Ryan said, gesturing weakly toward the data pad that still lay on the floor, a silent witness to his failure. "Tonight, I was just delivering that. Nothing important. Nothing that required me to barrel into you like some kind of human battering ram. He heard Chen make another sound. This one was definitely more dying animal. But Lyanna's smile widened. Human battering ram. That is the image you chose. It seemed accurate, Your Highness. Disturbingly so, she agreed. She paused, a thoughtful look in her ever-shifting eyes. Though I should mention that Celestine physiology is considerably denser than human. You likely hurt yourself more than you hurt me. Ryan blinked. Now that she mentioned it, his shoulder did ache with a deep, throbbing pain. He'd essentially collided with someone whose bones were reinforced with crystalline structures, whose muscles were enhanced through generations of genetic modification. He'd basically run into a beautifully sculpted wall. That's oddly comforting, Your Highness, Ryan said. Thank you. You are welcome. Lyanna glanced at the crowd around them, which was still maintaining a careful, respectful distance while absolutely devouring every second of this interaction with their eyes, ears, and other, less familiar sensory organs. Though I suspect this will be the most talked about moment of the reception. The Earth attaché who body-checked the Celestine crown heir. I'm so. Stop apologizing, Lyanna said, but her tone was amused, not irritated. I have been apologized to extensively. It is becoming repetitive. She looked at Chen, then back at Ryan, her expression turning decisive. I would like to speak with him privately for a moment. The color that had been slowly returning to Chen's face drained away again in an instant. Ryan worried the ambassador might actually faint. Your Highness, I assure you, that is not necessary, Chen said, the words tumbling out in a rush. Ryan has already apologized multiple times, and I am certain he has learned a valuable lesson about spatial awareness. We can leave immediately and trouble you no further. I am not requesting further apologies, Ambassador. Lyanna's voice remained pleasant, but something in its core, a subtle shift in its harmonic resonance, made it very clear this was not a negotiation. It was a statement of fact. I simply wish to speak with him briefly. It will not take long. She looked at Ryan, one elegant, white eyebrow arched. Unless you are opposed, Junior Attaché Mitchell. Ryan's brain, now functioning as a traitorous committee, presented him with several options, all of them terrible. Lie and say he was opposed. She would know immediately. Those magnificent, treacherous ears would detect the lie in the EM field of his brain. Tell the truth and refuse anyway. Career suicide, immediate deportation, a one-way ticket to obscurity. Or agree, and hope against hope that this didn't end with him being arrested, or spaced, or worse, put in charge of filing tax returns for the entire Celestine Dominion for the next century. I am not opposed, Your Highness, Ryan heard himself say, because apparently his mouth had decided that self-preservation was an overrated concept. Chen looked like he wanted to say something, probably several things, possibly in multiple languages, each more despairing than the last. Instead, he just nodded stiffly, his jaw clenched so tight Ryan could hear his teeth grinding from 3 feet away. His expression was a masterpiece of diplomatic communication, clearly conveying that if Ryan somehow survived this, they were going to have a very, very long conversation about appropriate behavior. The crowd parted like the Red Sea as Princess Lyanna began to glide toward a quieter alcove of the grand hall. Her guards fell into step behind her, a perfectly synchronized unit, maintaining a distance that was both respectful and close enough to intervene should the human battering ram attempt another charge. Ryan fell into step beside her, acutely aware of hundreds of eyes tracking their progress, their silence a heavier, more judgmental noise than any crowd murmur could ever be. "You can stop looking like you are walking to your execution," Lyanna said without looking at him, her voice low. "I am not going to have you arrested. That is reassuring, Your Highness. I thought it might be." She guided them to a secluded alcove near one of the massive viewing ports, where the distorted stars created a breathtaking, chaotic backdrop. Space itself stretched and smeared into a painter's abstraction of light and color. The ambient noise of the reception faded to a distant hum. "I wanted to speak with you," she began, turning to face him, "because your reaction interested me. My reaction to committing assault on your person, Your Highness. You did not commit assault. You made a mistake in a crowded space." She tilted her head. "But yes, your reaction. Do you know what most people do when they accidentally bump into me?" Ryan shook his head, mute. "They freeze," Lyanna said, her gaze drifting past him, into the memory of 1,000 similar encounters. "They stare at me as if I might spontaneously combust. Then, they either overreact with excessive, groveling apologies, or they underreact by pretending it did not happen, their faces a mask of forced nonchalance. Either way, their minds are not on the mistake itself, but on the calculation. How can they turn this to their advantage? Can they leverage my forgiveness? Can they spin this into an introduction?" Her long ears shifted backwards slightly, a gesture he was beginning to read as distaste. You just apologized. Sincerely. And looked genuinely horrified. No calculation. No angle. Just honest remorse. "To be fair, Your Highness," Ryan said, finding a sliver of his voice, "I was too terrified to calculate anything." Lyanna laughed again. That same, unvarnished, genuine sound. More honesty. "You really cannot help yourself, can you?" Ryan considered lying, then remembered the electromagnetic sensitive ears currently angled in his direction like sophisticated satellite dishes. Lying to someone who could literally detect the neural activity associated with deception seemed like the worst possible choice. "Apparently not, Your Highness," he admitted. "My supervisor says it is going to get me fired one day." "Your supervisor is probably correct," Lyanna said, and she was still smiling. "Though I find it refreshing." She paused, her expression growing more contemplative. "Do you know what my life is like, Junior Attaché Mitchell?" The question was so unexpected, so personal, that it threw him completely off balance. I cannot say that I do, Your Highness. Everyone is careful around me," Lyanna said, her gaze drifting out to the streaking stars beyond the viewport. "So incredibly, exhaustively careful. They measure every word before it leaves their lips. They calculate every gesture, every micro-expression. They treat me as if I am constructed from reactive antimatter, something that will detonate if handled incorrectly. She turned back to him, and her eyes had settled into a steady, deep amethyst. You crashed into me, apologized without calculation, and then admitted you were terrified. You were the most genuine interaction I have had in months. Ryan wasn't sure what to say to that. I'm sorry seemed grotesquely inadequate, but so did everything else his brain offered. Do not apologize again, Lyanna said, a flicker of her earlier amusement returning. I might have you arrested just for being repetitive. She paused. That was a joke, incidentally. I am told I should make that clear when I attempt them. Noted, Your Highness. Humor received and appreciated. Good. Lyanna made a subtle, almost imperceptible gesture with her fingers. One of her guards, a mountain of a man with a face of carved stone, immediately produced 2 glasses filled with a liquid that sparkled and swirled as if it contained captured nebulae. The guard's face remained utterly impassive, as if materializing celestial beverages from the ether was simply part of the job description. Lyanna took 1 glass and handed the other to Ryan. Celestine solar wine. It changes flavor based on your neurochemical state. Currently, I suspect yours will taste like anxiety, with distinct top notes of confusion. Ryan accepted the glass cautiously. It was cool to the touch. That sounds unpleasant, Your Highness. It is actually quite good. Anxiety has surprising citrus undertones. She raised her own glass slightly in a silent toast. Consider it the apology drink you should have offered me, except I am providing it. Your guilt may now diminish to manageable levels. Ryan took a careful sip. The wine was cool, effervescent, and danced on his tongue. It did, indeed, taste like lemons and limes, mixed with something else he couldn't identify, a faint, electric tang that was probably the physical embodiment of his own panic. Thank you, Your Highness. You are welcome. Lyanna drank from her own glass, her expression thoughtful. So, if you were not terrified right now, what would you actually say to me? Honestly, Your Highness, I am asking for honesty, are I not? Ryan thought about it, truly thought, pushing past the wall of his fear. I would probably ask if you are actually okay. I hit you fairly hard. And then, I would offer to get you a proper drink, which you have now provided yourself, and probably try to make conversation that didn't involve me apologizing every 30 seconds. What kind of conversation? Lyanna asked, and she seemed genuinely, deeply curious. I don't know. Normal conversation. Ryan realized how absurd that sounded. Though I'm not sure what normal conversation with a crown heir looks like. My diplomatic training covered formal protocols, but it skipped the section on casual chat after accidental assault. Accidental assault, Lyanna repeated, her lips twitching. You have a gift for self-criticism. 3 months of diplomatic service, Your Highness. I've had time to develop it. Only 3 months. Lyanna's long ears lifted slightly. Surprise, Ryan guessed. You are very new to this. Extremely new, Your Highness. I am still learning which fork to use at formal dinners. The small one on the outside, Lyanna said. Unless it is a Vaxian dinner, in which case there are no forks, and using one is an insult that could start a trade war. See, Ryan said, a real smile touching his lips for the first time since the collision. This is the kind of information I need. He then caught himself. Your Highness. Lyanna waved a hand dismissively. The gesture made the fabric of her gown shift through 3 different shades of blue. You can relax the constant honorifics. We are having a conversation, not conducting a formal audience. She paused, a glint in her eye. Though if my advisors asked, this was definitely a formal disciplinary discussion about proper reception behavior. Understood, Your Highness. Ryan grinned slightly. I mean, understood. Better. Lyanna took another sip of her wine. Tell me something, Ryan Mitchell. Why did you choose diplomacy? You are clearly not suited for the careful political maneuvering that typically defines the profession. That is a very polite way of saying I am terrible at it. I am saying you are honest in a field that rewards calculated deception, Lyanna corrected. There is a difference. Ryan considered the question seriously, setting his wine glass on a small, floating tray that drifted over to accommodate it. I grew up on a colony world. Kepler 186f. We had about 40,000 people from a dozen different Earth nations, plus maybe 5,000 non-humans. Everyone had to figure out how to coexist, or we would have all suffocated, starved, or torn each other apart. He looked out at the streaking stars, seeing not the distorted light, but the red dust of his homeworld. I watched people from completely different backgrounds, species who had nearly gone to war 60 years earlier, find common ground. I saw a Terran mining engineer and a Syrinx fluid dynamics specialist, a being who communicates through chromatophore patterns. For God's sake, develop a water recycling system together that saved the entire eastern sector. He looked back at her. I believed in the possibility of understanding. You believed in the necessity of it, Lyanna said quietly. I believed in the necessity of it, Ryan echoed. Space is big, and dark, and we are all stuck in it together. It seemed like we should at least try not to hate each other. He glanced at her. That probably sounds naive. It sounds idealistic, Lyanna said, which is different from naive. Idealism suggests you know how difficult something is, but you believe it is worth attempting anyway. Her expression had turned serious, almost sad. Naivety suggests you do not understand the difficulty at all. Which one am I? I am not sure yet, Lyanna admitted. You have been a junior attaché for 3 months. Give it 3 years, and ask me again. Ryan laughed, surprising himself with the sound. Will you remember this conversation in 3 years, Your Highness? Lyanna's eyes met his, and something in her expression shifted, deepened. The ambient starlight from the viewport caught the crystals in her hair, making her seem like a figure from a myth, both timeless and immediate. I have a feeling I will remember the night someone checked me at a diplomatic reception and then had an honest conversation with me. Those do not happen often enough to forget. One of her guards approached quietly, murmuring something in a flowing, melodic language that Ryan's translator didn't even attempt to parse. Lyanna nodded, and Ryan watched as her professional demeanor slid back into place like a suit of invisible armor. The woman who had laughed and spoken of idealism vanished, replaced by the crown heir. "I need to return to the reception," she said, her voice regaining its formal cadence. "People will start speculating about what I have done with you." She paused, and the ghost of the other woman returned for a fleeting second. "I have not done anything with you, to be clear. In case that needs stating for the record. Appreciate the clarification, Your Highness. I thought you might." Lyanna finished her wine and handed the empty glass to her guard. "If you survive tonight without further incident, Junior Attaché Mitchell, I hope you will be at future diplomatic functions." Ryan stood there, holding his half-finished glass of solar wine, watching as Princess Lyanna disappeared back into the swirling tapestry of the crowd. Her guards created a subtle, impenetrable perimeter around her, and within seconds, she was surrounded once more, a constellation of diplomats and officials all vying for a moment of her attention, each interaction a carefully choreographed piece of a never-ending ballet of power. Ryan. Ambassador Chen materialized at his elbow like a particularly stressed and disapproving ghost. "What in the name of all that is holy just happened?" "I'm honestly not sure," Ryan admitted, his head spinning. "I think I just had a conversation with a princess." After body-checking her, Chen added, rubbing his temples as if trying to physically suppress a migraine. "You are going to give me a stroke. Do you understand that? A full-blown, lights-out, cardiovascular event." "I have excellent health insurance," Ryan offered weakly. "It covers dependents. Technically, you'd qualify as someone who depends on me not creating diplomatic disasters." "That is not how dependent coverage works." Chen took the wine glass from Ryan's hand and drained it in one determined gulp. His eyes widened, and he coughed. "Why does this taste like impending retirement?" "Solar wine. It reflects your neurochemical state." Ryan paused. "Are you actually thinking about retirement?" "I am always thinking about retirement," Chen muttered darkly. "Especially during receptions where my junior attaché assaults foreign royalty." He handed the empty glass to a passing service drone that chirped in thanks. "But apparently, the crown heir of the Celestine Dominion found you charming, which is either the best thing or the worst thing that could have happened tonight." "Why would it be the worst thing?" Chen gave him a look that suggested Ryan had just asked why vacuum was bad for breathing. "Because now you are on her radar. Do you understand what that means? The Celestine Dominion controls 12 star systems and has a military capacity that makes Earth's defense fleet look like children's toys. Their royal family doesn't just govern. They are genetically enhanced, biotechnologically augmented, and have been ruling for 3,000 years. And you just became interesting to the crown heir. You're making this sound ominous." "I am making this sound realistic," Chen corrected. "Princess Lyanna is brilliant, politically astute, and surrounded by people who want to control her for their own advantage. If she is genuinely interested in your perspective, that could be valuable for Earth's diplomatic position." Or it could paint a target on your back from every faction that wants to limit her influence. Or both. It is usually both. Ryan felt something cold and heavy settle in his stomach, the brief warmth from the wine and the conversation evaporating. I just had a conversation with her. I know, Chen said with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 diplomatic compromises. And that's either the smartest thing or the dumbest thing you have done. Come on. Let's actually deliver this data pad before something else goes catastrophically wrong tonight. They made their way through the crowd, which had returned to its normal, controlled chaos. But Ryan noticed the looks now. Subtle glances, whispered conversations behind hands or translator implants. Word had spread with viral speed. I'm famous, Ryan murmured. For all the wrong reasons, Chen confirmed. Welcome to diplomacy. They found Chen's contact near the Andromedian delegation, a tall, slender woman with skin like liquid mercury and large, compound eyes that reflected the hall's lighting in mesmerizing fractal patterns. She accepted the data pad with multiple, delicately articulated fingers. You are the one who collided with the Celestine princess, she said, her voice harmonizing with itself through secondary vocal chambers. Bold strategy. It wasn't a strategy, Ryan said. It was an accident involving poor spatial awareness. Even better, the Andromedian said, her eye facets shifting through a spectrum of colors. Amusement, Ryan's translator supplied. Accidents are more memorable than strategies. She will remember you. That's what I'm afraid of, Ryan muttered. The Andromedian's ocular facets shifted again. Fear is appropriate, but so is opportunity. The princess does not often show interest in anyone outside her predetermined circle. She looked at Chen. Your attaché might have just opened a door no one expected. Or stepped on a landmine no one saw. Chen's expression was grim. Possibly both. The Andromedian nodded sagely. Politics usually works that way. They spent the next hour navigating the remaining social requirements of the reception. Brief, meaningless conversations with minor officials, updates on trade negotiations that Ryan barely understood, the careful, unspoken dance of who spoke to whom and in what order. Ryan's mind, however, kept wandering back to the alcove, to the woman who had seemed so genuinely interested in his answers, to the way her long ears had shifted with each change in her attention or emotion. He caught sight of her once across the hall, surrounded by what looked like senior Celestine officials. Her posture was different now, more formal, more rigid, her face a mask of polite attention. The woman who had laughed at his self-deprecating humor had been replaced by the crown heir of an interstellar empire. Ryan wondered which version was real, or if both were, or if the question even made sense when you were born into royalty that spanned star systems. Stop staring, Chen said quietly, not looking at him. People will notice. People already noticed, Ryan pointed out. I literally ran into her. Yes, and now you are the subject of speculation across half the diplomatic corps, Chen said. Try not to add fuel to that particular fire. Ryan forced himself to focus on the conversation at hand, something about mineral rights in the outer belt. But his attention was a slippery thing, constantly drifting. The reception was finally winding down, delegates beginning their carefully timed departures, when Ryan felt his personal communicator vibrate against his wrist. He glanced down at the display, expecting a routine reminder about tomorrow's briefings. Instead, he saw a message from an unknown sender, encrypted with protocols he recognized, with a sinking feeling, as Celestine military grade. The solar wine at your station tastes better than anxiety. Try it when you have time to relax. L***. Ryan stared at the message, the letters burning into his retina. Princess Lyanna had just sent him a personal communication through an encryption channel that probably cost more than Earth's entire annual diplomatic budget. "What is it?" Chen asked, noticing his frozen posture. "Nothing," Ryan said quickly, closing the display and hoping his face wasn't as pale as it felt. "Just a reminder from logistics." Chen looked suspicious but didn't press. Ryan pocketed the communicator and tried to focus on the mineral rights discussion, but his mind was a maelstrom. The message was casual, friendly even, but it also meant Lyanna had taken the time and considerable effort to acquire his personal contact information and send him a private message after returning to her official duties. That wasn't nothing. That was definitely something. He just wasn't sure if it was something good, or something that would eventually get him killed. Possibly both, he thought, remembering the Andromedian's words. The cold weight in his stomach intensified, but alongside it, now, was a tiny, dangerous, and utterly undeniable spark of excitement. The message glowed on his communicator, a simple string of words that felt heavier than a stellar core. "The solar wine at your station tastes better than anxiety. Try it when you have time to relax. L." For 3 days, Ryan moved through his duties like a ghost, his body performing the mundane tasks of a junior attaché while his mind orbited a single, terrifying point of gravity. The encrypted message was a singularity in his otherwise predictable life. He checked his communicator obsessively, half hoping, half dreading a follow-up. Ambassador Chen had noticed his distraction during a briefing on tariff regulations and pulled him aside afterward, his expression a mixture of concern and exasperation. "You're thinking about the princess," Chen said. "It wasn't a question. I'm thinking about tariff regulations," Ryan lied, the words feeling like ash in his mouth. "Your left eye twitches when you lie," Chen informed him wearily. "It's been doing that for the past hour. Also, you called the Krellian trade minister, Your Highness, twice. He's an elected bureaucrat who finds titles offensive." Ryan winced. "Did I apologize extensively? He actually seemed impressed by your commitment to groveling." Chen leaned against his desk, the metal groaning softly under his weight. "Look, Ryan, I don't know what happened between you and Princess Lyanna, but whatever it was, don't let it consume you. This job requires focus. You're walking around like someone hit you with a neural disruptor." "Noted, sir. I'll focus better." "See that you do," Chen said, though his expression was more sympathetic than his tone. "And Ryan, if she contacts you again, tell me immediately. Not because I want to interfere, but because I need to know if Earth's diplomatic position is about to get interesting in ways I am not prepared for." Ryan nodded, the guilt over the message he hadn't mentioned curdling in his stomach. He'd read it 47 times. He knew, because he'd counted. That evening, as he sat in his quarters attempting to eat something the food synthesizer bravely identified as lasagna, his communicator vibrated with the distinctive, encrypted pulse. His heart hammered against his ribs. Another message. "There's a cultural exchange session tomorrow at 1400. Conference Room 7. I requested Earth's representation. Your ambassador is sending you. Try not to collide with anyone. L***." He read it 4 times, the words not changing, their implication solidifying into reality. Princess Lyanna had arranged for him to attend a meeting with her. Officially. Through proper channels. He should tell Chen. He knew he should. But a deeper, more reckless instinct held his tongue. This was his path, the one he'd stumbled onto in the Grand Hall. He would walk it alone, for now. The next morning, Chen briefed him on the cultural exchange session with the enthusiasm of a man describing a particularly tedious form of root canal surgery. It's usually just formal presentations about artistic traditions and historical context, Chen explained, massaging his temples. The Celestine Dominion takes this very seriously. Their culture is 3,000 years old, ours is a chaotic blip. Be polite, be attentive, and for the love of everything holy, do not mention the war. What war? Ryan asked, genuinely confused. Any war, Chen stressed. The Celestines have been involved in approximately 47 armed conflicts over the past 3 millennia. At least one of them is probably still a sensitive topic. Just avoid military history entirely. What should I talk about? Let them talk, Chen advised. Nod thoughtfully. Ask respectful questions. Remember, humility is your friend. Arrogance gets people spaced. Ryan arrived at conference room 7 15 minutes early, his palms damp. The room was intimate, a round table at its center surrounded by chairs designed to accommodate a variety of physiologies. The walls displayed slow-moving holograms of Celestine worlds. Cities that looked like forests of glowing crystal, oceans that pulsed with bioluminescent tides, mountains that speared into lavender skies. It was beautiful and alien, a stark reminder of the gulf between his world and hers. Princess Lyanna arrived exactly on time, accompanied by 2 of her impassive guards and a Celestine official Ryan recognized. Minister Thalaria, the woman who had given the interminable presentation on multidimensional art. She looked as if she had been carved from a single block of ice, her features sharp and severe, her pale blue skin lacking the soft luminescence of Lyanna's. Lyanna's expression was perfectly diplomatic, a mask of polite interest. But when her eyes met Ryan's, just for a fraction of a second, something flickered within their violet silver depths. Recognition, amusement, a shared secret. Junior Attaché Mitchell, she said formally, her voice the clear, cultured instrument of state. Thank you for representing Earth at this session. Your Highness, Ryan said, executing a bow that felt slightly less clumsy than his last attempt. The honor is mine. Minister Thalaria launched into a presentation about Celestine symphonic poetry, an art form that involved harmonic frequencies meant to resonate with the listener's DNA. Holographic displays showed complex, shifting sound wave patterns that made Ryan's eyes water. He tried to follow. He truly did, but his attention was a bird constantly returning to its nest, Lyanna. She sat across from him, her posture regal and unyielding, her face a flawless mask of engagement that revealed nothing of the woman who had laughed at his jokes. After 45 minutes of philosophical discourse that made his head ache, Minister Thalaria was summoned away to handle an urgent matter. She excused herself with a curt nod, leaving Ryan alone with Lyanna and her guards. The moment the door hissed shut, the formal mask dropped from Lyanna's face. Her shoulders relaxed, and a sigh, soft as silk, escaped her lips. Finally, she said, the life returning to her voice. I thought Thalaria would never leave. She's thorough, Ryan offered. That is a diplomatic way of saying, incredibly boring, Lyanna said, a genuine smile touching her lips. You are learning. She gestured subtly to her guards, who moved to the doorway, positioning themselves to block the entrance while maintaining the illusion of privacy. I apologize for the elaborate setup, Lyanna said, her voice dropping, but I needed a legitimate reason to speak with you again. You could have just sent another message, Ryan said. Messages can be intercepted, decoded, analyzed, she replied, her long ears twitching with a nervous energy he hadn't seen before. Even with military encryption, there are people in my court who would find a way. Face-to-face conversations in monitored diplomatic settings are actually more private than you'd think. Everyone expects formal discussions, so they don't listen as carefully. Ryan felt the cold sensation from the reception return to his stomach. That sounds paranoid, Your Highness. It sounds experienced, Lyanna corrected, her gaze intense. There is a difference. She stood and walked to the holographic window, which now displayed a Celestine city at twilight, its crystalline spires catching the light of a setting purple sun. I did not arrange this meeting just to chat, Ryan. I need your help, my help. The disbelief in his voice was palpable. Your Highness, I'm a junior attaché who's been doing this for 3 months. I didn't know which fork to use at formal dinners until last week. What could I possibly help you with? Exactly that, Lyanna said, turning to face him. Her eyes were a steady, serious violet. You are junior, new, and from a relatively minor diplomatic power. No one is watching you closely. No one considers you a threat or a player in the political games that surround me constantly. She took a step toward him. I need someone I can trust, and trust is remarkably difficult to find when you're surrounded by people who have spent their entire lives learning how to be untrustworthy. Her expression was raw now, the crown air stripped away to reveal a young woman burdened by a crushing weight. Someone in my delegation is sabotaging the trade agreements. Small changes, subtle alterations to shipping routes and cargo manifests. Nothing obvious enough to trigger immediate concerns, but coordinated enough to suggest intentional manipulation. Ryan's mind raced, trying to keep up with the sheer scale of what she was implying. You think someone in your own delegation is working against you. I know they are, Lyanna said, her jaw tightening. I just don't know who, or why, or what they're ultimately planning. My advisors all claim ignorance. My security teams find nothing. And my own government officials assure me I'm being paranoid. She met his gaze, and the conviction in her eyes was absolute. I am not paranoid, Ryan. I am observant. Ryan stared at her, the pieces clicking into a terrifying mosaic. You want me to investigate a conspiracy within the Celestine Dominion's diplomatic corps? Yes, Lyanna said simply. That seems like a terrible plan, Your Highness. It is the only plan I have, she admitted, a sliver of vulnerability showing through her resolve. Everyone else I could ask is either potentially compromised or too visible to investigate without drawing attention. You have access to documentation systems. You process logistics reports, and absolutely no one would suspect you of being anything other than what you appear to be, a junior attaché doing his job. Ryan walked to the holographic cityscape, the glowing spires feeling like a cage. His diplomatic training screamed that this was above his clearance level, beyond his capabilities, and probably illegal in a dozen different jurisdictions. His common sense agreed enthusiastically. But there was something in her voice. Not just the weight of command, but the loneliness of it. She didn't ask for help easily. He could hear that. If I get caught accessing classified information, I'll be arrested, Ryan said, turning to face her. Deported. Definitely fired. I am aware of the risks, Lyanna said quietly. And if I find something, what then? Who do I report to? You. Your security. Ambassador Chen. He gestured vaguely toward the door. Because if someone in your delegation is dirty, how do I know your security isn't compromised, too? You report directly to me, Lyanna said, her voice firm. No intermediaries. No official channels. Just you and me. Ryan let out a short, slightly unhinged laugh. This is insane. You know that, right? This entire situation is objectively insane. Yes, Lyanna agreed without a hint of humor. But it is also necessary. These trade agreements affect dozens of worlds, billions of people. If someone is manipulating them for their own purposes, the consequences could range from economic disruption to actual warfare. No pressure, though, Ryan muttered, running a hand through his hair. Substantial pressure, Lyanna corrected. I am not going to lie to you about the stakes. Ryan thought about his colony world, about the Terran engineer and the Syrinx specialist, about the fragile, hard-won understanding that kept the air breathable and the water flowing. He thought about why he'd chosen this path. Not for the glamour or the power, but for the simple, stubborn belief that bridges could be built, even across the vastness of space. He also thought about how this could shatter his career, his life, before it had even properly begun. If I do this, Ryan said slowly, the words feeling monumental, I need something from you. Lyanna's eyebrows rose, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. You're negotiating with me. You said you valued honesty, Ryan said, meeting her gaze squarely. Honestly, I'm terrified and underqualified, but I'll help you because I think you're right. This is necessary. In exchange, if this goes wrong, when this goes wrong, I need you to protect Ambassador Chen. He's a good man and a good diplomat. He doesn't deserve to have his career destroyed because I made a questionable decision. Something profound shifted in Lyanna's expression. The surprise melted into a look of deep, unexpected respect. You are not asking for protection for yourself. I'm the one making the choice, Ryan said. Chen didn't sign up for whatever this becomes. He gets protection. That's the deal. Lyanna studied him for a long moment, her long ears angled forward in complete focus, as if she were listening to the very quality of his soul. Agreed, she said finally. Ambassador Chen will be protected, regardless of the outcome. You have my word. Your word as a princess, Ryan asked, or as Lyanna? Both, she said, and a faint, sad smile touched her lips. They are the same thing when I give them to someone I trust. The word hung in the air between them. Trust. A princess trusted him. After 3 days and one accidental collision, he felt something warm and terrifying settle in his chest, a feeling that was part dread, part determination, and part something else he couldn't name. All right then, Ryan said, his voice steadier than he felt. I'm going to need access to shipping manifests and routing data. And I'll need a cover story for why I'm suddenly interested in cargo classifications. You are conducting an efficiency review, Lyanna said immediately. Earth wants to optimize its shipping contracts. It's boring enough that no one will question it, and it gives you legitimate reasons to examine the data. That actually works, Ryan admitted. I have been planning this for weeks, Lyanna said. I just needed the right person to execute it. She moved closer to him, her luminescent skin casting a soft blue glow on his standard issue suit. Thank you, Ryan. I know I'm asking a lot. You're asking everything, Ryan corrected. But apparently, I'm too stupid or too idealistic to say no. I prefer to think you're brave, Lyanna said softly. Let's see if I survive first, Ryan replied, before we start assigning positive character traits. The following week, Ryan threw himself into what he mentally termed, Project Don't Get Arrested. His days were a blur of authorized data requests and cross-referenced cargo manifests. He became a ghost in the machine of Station Celestia's logistics, his terminal a portal into the endless, intricate dance of interstellar commerce. He discovered the irregularities Lyanna had mentioned. They were masterpieces of subtlety. A container of agricultural sensors rerouted from a direct path to a circuitous 3-jump route, adding weeks to its delivery. A timestamp on a manifest for deuterium fuel shifted by 12 hours, creating a gap in the digital ledger. A shipment of medical supplies to a fledgling colony listed as delayed for customs inspection, on a world with no customs authority. Individually, they were annoyances, bureaucratic glitches. But as Ryan mapped them, a pattern emerged like a constellation connecting dark stars. The modifications all created the same thing: windows of opportunity. blind spots in the tracking system, gaps large enough to move something, or a lot of somethings, without anyone asking questions. And the authorization codes, carefully spoofed and layered under false priorities, all led back to the same administrative node. The node belonging to Minister Thalaria's office. Late one night, the station's artificial circadian rhythm dimming the lights to a soft night cycle glow, Ryan sat in his quarters, the evidence compiled into a damning, encrypted file. His door chimed, a sharp, intrusive sound in the quiet. His blood ran cold. They know. He quickly closed the files, his heart hammering. Who is it? Station security. Attaché Mitchell. Open up. He took a deep breath, the air tasting of recycled fear, and opened the door. Two security officers stood there, their expressions professionally neutral. Junior Attaché Mitchell, the lead officer, a woman with a severe haircut and cybernetic eyes, said, "You are required to come with us for questioning regarding unauthorized access to classified systems." "I can explain." "You will explain at security headquarters," she interrupted, her voice leaving no room for argument. "Please come quietly." The walk to security headquarters was the longest of his life. The sterile, brightly lit corridors of the station felt like a tunnel leading to his own professional execution. He imagined Chen's face, the disappointment, the fury. He thought of Lyanna, and a different, sharper fear pierced him, the fear of failing her. The security office was designed for discomfort. Hard chairs, stark lighting, the faint smell of ozone and antiseptic. It was working perfectly. Just as the lead officer began her interrogation, the door hissed open. Princess Lyanna stood there, her presence instantly commanding the room's gravity. Her expression was unreadable, her guards flanking her like statues of judgment. The security officers immediately snapped to a more rigid posture. "Your Highness," the lead officer stammered. "We were not informed." "Release him," Lyanna said, her voice calm, absolute, and layered with the unshakable authority of her station. "Junior Attaché Mitchell is acting under my direct authorization." The silence in the room was profound. Ryan watched the officers exchange a series of frantic, silent communications with their eyes. "Your Highness," the lead officer said carefully, "our systems flagged his access patterns as highly suspicious. Multiple classified databases, unusual search parameters. All authorized by me," Lyanna interrupted, her gaze never leaving the officer's face. "Attaché Mitchell is conducting a confidential review at my personal request. The classification was necessary to prevent interference with the investigation." Ryan could see the calculation happening behind the officer's cybernetic eyes. A Crown heir had just publicly staked her reputation on a junior attaché from Earth. To contradict her was not just a career ender, it was a political act. "Of course, Your Highness," the lead officer said, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "Our most profound apologies for the misunderstanding. Attaché Mitchell is free to go." As Ryan stood, his legs trembling with adrenaline and relief, Lyanna caught his eye. Her message was clear, transmitted in a single, shared glance: "We need to talk. Now." They left security headquarters together, her guards forming a protective phalanx around them. Once they were in a secured, private corridor, Lyanna turned to him, the mask of royal composure cracking to reveal the urgency beneath. "Did you find something?" she asked, her voice low and intense. "Yes," Ryan said, the word feeling like a confession. "And it's worse than we thought." He pulled up the encrypted files on his communicator, showing her the mapped patterns, the rerouted shipments, the ghostly trail of authorization codes. The modifications all lead to the same destination, a private station in neutral space. And the authorization codes, they trace back to someone in your senior advisory council. He didn't need to say the name. He watched the realization dawn on her face, watched the pain etch itself into her features, deep and personal. "Minister Thalaria," Lyanna said, her voice flat, hollow. "The one who gave the boring presentation." "The very one," Ryan confirmed. "I think the presentation was part of the act. She wanted to seem harmless. Forgettable." Lyanna's jaw tightened, a muscle flickering beneath her luminescent skin. "She has been with my family for 20 years. She helped teach me statecraft. Why would she?" She stopped, a deeper, more painful understanding dawning in her eyes. "My brother," she whispered. "She has always supported his claim to the throne. He believes my approach is too conciliatory." The shipping irregularities started right after the trade agreements were proposed, Ryan said gently, connecting the final, tragic dot. "If they fail, if you're seen as incompetent or unable to control your own delegation, he becomes the preferred heir," Lyanna finished, the words tasting of ash. She looked at Ryan, and he saw not just a princess, but a daughter, a sister, betrayed. "She's trying to destroy my reputation to advance his position." "I'm sorry," Ryan said, because there were no other words adequate for such a wound. Lyanna took a sharp, controlled breath, and he watched the transformation happen in real time. The vulnerable woman receded. The crown heir advanced, her posture straightening, her face settling into an expression of grim resolve. The pain was still there, but it was now a fuel, not a weakness. "You have the evidence, all of it, documented, encrypted, ready for whatever you need," Ryan said. "Then we present it to my father. Tomorrow, officially." She looked at him, and her gaze was unwavering. "You will need to testify." "I expected that. It will not be comfortable, Ryan. My court is not kind to outsiders who expose internal corruption. They will attack you, your credentials, your motives." "Also expected," Ryan said, managing a weak smile. "Though I'm getting really tired of being uncomfortable around your government." A ghost of her earlier smile returned. "For what it is worth, you have handled this with more competence and courage than most career diplomats would have." "I had good motivation," Ryan said. "You asked for help. It seemed rude to refuse." "Most people refuse me constantly," Lyanna said quietly, her voice laced with a loneliness that stretched across light years. "They just do it very, very politely." The Celestine Royal Council chamber was a place of immense, silent power. The ceiling soared into darkness, giving the impression of an open sky, while the walls were lined with live feeds from a dozen Celestine worlds. The council members themselves sat in a semicircle, their faces a collection of ancient, augmented, and inscrutable masks. Ryan felt smaller than he ever had, a single, fragile organism under a microscope the size of a solar system. Ambassador Chen sat in the observers section, his face a pale, rigid mask of professional concern. Ryan knew the man was internally screaming. But Lyanna was there. She stood beside him, a pillar of calm strength. Her presence transformed the proceeding. This was not an Earth attaché making wild accusations. This was the Crown Heir presenting the findings of her own investigation. Ryan spoke, his voice surprisingly steady as he walked the council through the data. He showed them the patterns, the rerouted shipments, the forensic trail of digital breadcrumbs. He explained the cover of the Efficiency Review, and how it had allowed him to see what others, looking for a grand conspiracy, had missed. A death by 1,000 paper cuts. Minister Thalaria sat perfectly still, her ice-carved features showing no emotion. When it was her turn to speak, her denial was cool, practiced, and laced with condescension. A compelling fiction woven from coincidences and the overactive imagination of a child playing at diplomacy, she said, her voice dripping with contempt. The stress on the young Crown Heir is well known, and it seems she has found a willing puppet in this, human. Lyanna did not flinch. The evidence speaks for itself, Minister. The authorization codes lead directly to your terminal. Your biometrics are on the override commands. Forged. Thalaria countered smoothly. A clumsy attempt to frame a loyal servant of the Dominion. It was a stalemate. Ryan's heart sank. She was too good, too entrenched. Then Lyanna nodded to the head of her personal guard. He stepped forward and placed a small, crystalline data core on the central dais. My personal security, acting on Attaché Mitchell's findings, conducted a physical search of your quarters, Minister, Lyanna said, her voice ringing with finality. We found this. It contains the unencrypted logs of your communications with my brother's supporters. The financial transfers. The orders for the weapons you have been smuggling through those shipping gaps to arm his faction. The silence in the chamber was absolute. The air grew heavy, charged with the shock of the revelation. Thalaria's mask shattered. Her eyes widened, her composure crumbling into raw, undisguised fury and fear. You would side with an alien over your own kind, over the strength of your blood. She spat at Lyanna. I side with the truth, Lyanna replied, her voice cold and clear as space. And with the well-being of the Dominion, which you have betrayed. The room erupted. Guards moved in, their steps echoing in the cavernous space. Thalaria was escorted out, her protests fading into the hum of shocked whispers among the council members. Through the chaos, Lyanna remained standing, her head held high, but Ryan saw the slight tremble in her hands, carefully concealed at her sides. He had just watched her tear a piece of her own life out by the roots. When the council finally adjourned, Ryan found himself in the corridor with Chen, who looked like he had aged a decade in an hour. You investigated a conspiracy, Chen said, his voice hoarse, without telling me. You used my authority for your efficiency review. I was protecting you, Ryan explained, exhaustion washing over him. If it had gone wrong, you'd have had plausible deniability. You could have thrown me to the wolves and saved your career. That's not how this is supposed to work. Chen snapped, but the anger was already bleeding out of him, replaced by a bewildered respect. Though, I suppose, given the outcome, I should be thanking you rather than preparing your termination paperwork. I'll take the thanks, Ryan said, a weary smile on his face. Don't push your luck, Chen grumbled, but he clapped a hand on Ryan's shoulder, a gesture so rare it felt like a medal. That evening, as Ryan sat in the silence of his quarters, the adrenaline finally receding and leaving him hollow, his communicator vibrated. Meet me at Observation Deck C. We should talk. He found her there, standing before the great viewport, alone but for a single, discreet guard. The stars beyond were calm now, the station having settled into a normal orbit, the universe returned to its patient, steady state. She was out of her formal gown, dressed in simpler, though still elegant, trousers and a tunic that shimmered softly. She looked more like the woman from the alcove. You did well today, she said without turning, her voice soft. The council was impressed, though they would never admit it to an outsider. I just presented the evidence, Ryan said, coming to stand beside her. You're the one who had to face your own. I'm sorry it was Thalaria. Lyanna was silent for a long moment, watching the stars. So am I, but sentiment cannot rule an empire. Only justice can. She turned to face him, and in the dim light, her luminescence was a gentle, personal galaxy. My father was grateful and pragmatic. She paused, and Ryan sensed a shift, a new gravity forming between them. He has requested that you remain on Station Celestia for the foreseeable future. As Earth's permanent liaison to the Celestine diplomatic mission. Ryan blinked, the words not quite computing. That's a significant promotion. It is recognition, Lyanna said, that you have proven yourself to be trustworthy and competent. Both are rare qualities in any court, in any galaxy. She took a small step closer. It also means we will be working together regularly. If that is acceptable to you. You're asking if I'm okay with a promotion and regular contact with you. I am asking if you are prepared for what that means, Lyanna said, her gaze intense and serious. People will talk, Ryan. They will speculate about our relationship. They will dissect every conversation we have. Some will try to befriend you. Others will try to destroy you, to get to me. It will not be easy. The target on your back, it just got much brighter. Ryan looked at her. The princess who valued honesty, the heir who carried the weight of stars, the woman who had trusted him with her deepest fears. He thought of the terror of the collision, the tension of the investigation, the profound satisfaction of standing for what was right, even in the face of a gilded court. Nothing about this has been easy, Ryan said, meeting her violet-silver eyes. But it's been honest. And it's been worth doing. Lyanna smiled then, the same genuine, unguarded smile from the reception, a beacon in the quiet dark of the observation deck. Then I suppose we will navigate this together, Liaison Mitchell. I'll try not to collide with anyone else along the way, he said, returning her smile. Please do, Lyanna said, her eyes sparkling. I would prefer to remain your most memorable diplomatic incident. They stood together at the viewport, watching the steady, untwisted stars. Ryan realized that the nervous junior attaché who had arrived on Station Celestia was gone. In his place was someone else, someone who had been forged in a crucible of panic and purpose. He had come as a spectator, an outsider. He was staying as a participant, a trusted ally. All because he had accidentally bumped into the right person. Or the wrong person, depending on one's perspective. But definitely, undoubtedly, the most interesting person. That much was certain.